Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in again to another episode of CivilianTacticalWeapons.com. Today's episode is actually going to be a redo of an old video of mine, actually my first video, and actually at a viewer's request there's a couple other little items they want to see in more detail. So what I'm going to try to do is actually cover the HK USC to UMP 45 conversion and try to do it under 10 minutes. So if you have an HK USC, you'll have something that looks similar to this. Mine here is actually missing a couple pieces because I've already done the conversion, and one of them being the actual trigger group itself has actually been removed from the gun. That actually sits in the new UMP 45 lower, and there's no way I can actually show that in under 45 minutes. There's a pin in the back that actually ends up being tossed in the garbage. You'll get new pins. You'll actually get a new a bolt-through pin that you'll have to get, an HK bolt-through pin. And what I want to do is show you the actual part. So when you have the actual HK, you'll go ahead and take your pin off the back, and that'll break the HK out to a few pieces. My magazine down here is actually is completely empty. I haven't loaded this magazine in 2 years. So, but here's going to be the pieces that are going to be taken off. So all of these pieces of the H&K are pretty much garbage at this point. You're not going to use any of them anymore, with the exception of you're going to take this piece here, which is a little rubber component that sits in here, and you're actually going to put that into the new stock block you're going to get. So that piece will actually transfer over to the new one. What that's actually doing is there's a mechanical, you'll see the actual spring system in here, and the bolt it actually slams up against that little rubber piece that sits in there. So make sure you do put it in the other stock block. Of course, the trigger group itself will actually be removed. So if we go through the actual pieces required, is this is one of the pieces that most people will actually forget to get. Is actually the H&K pin set, and this is actually a 2-piece pin set which actually will go completely through the back of the stock block. So as you can see, when it comes together, it stays like this. The other thing too is it actually has a sling attachment point on it, so you can actually do a 3-point sling on the side of it, which actually makes a lot more sense when you have a folding stock. If in your old USC, you would actually attach it to the back of the stock here. Well, if this folded over, you couldn't use the sling at all. So because you're going to be doing a folding stock, this push pin is actually pretty important. So if we go through that, the next pieces you're going to get are the actual stock block itself. There's going to be a set pin that you're going to hammer through to actually connect the stock block. As you can see, that portion there is the actual stock block, and then this will be whatever stock you picked. So for example, I've got the folding stock. This is actually an HK made part. The stock block itself is actually a US made part. It's not a import part. The trigger, so here's my trigger group. The actual trigger, the whole trigger group, this pretty much everything here is an H&K factory part, with the exception of the trigger itself is a US made trigger. That's actually a compliancy part. If you hear my whole concept of the compliancy parts, it's how many pieces you have to put on the gun in order to be compliant by different federal standards. So the next thing you'll have will actually be an H&K UMP 45 magazine. However, the only parts you're going to keep is the actual outer shell of the magazine and the spring. You're going to buy a US made follower. So this is actually a US made follower, and then a US made magazine magazine floor plate. This is also again for compliancy reasons. As far as mechanical, I'll actually show you. We're going to do a zoom in of the mechanical components, and I'll show you what's actually done to the upper side of the gun. This is actually the portion where a lot of people have some concerns over, so I'm going to go through this in a little detail. And I'm going to do a zoom in so you can see this a little better. Now what I'm going to do is actually show you the lower here. The original magazine actually sits like this in the gun. As you can see, the magazine is significantly narrower compared to the UMP 45. So what we need to do is actually widen this magazine. This is the only components that you're actually going to cut. You're going to widen this out a little bit. We'll take a look at mine here. Opening's about 2 inches. but the width has actually been increased to about 1.25 inches, maybe a little short of 1.25 inches. What you want to do when making this cut, and I'll show you the kind of the not very eloquent way I did it, is I actually laid this up against the top of it and went ahead and took a measurement of what these notches are here. So if you're looking at the top of the magazine, what you're trying to do is notch it to here. Remember, it's there's no problem with making the cut not enough versus making the cut too much. So what you want to do is actually just take this in a few stages. And I just kept making the cut until this thing sat flush with the magazine. So what I was trying to do is make this as minimal of amount of a cut as possible. Because when the lower sits here, and it comes right through, it'll stay flush with it, and you want to make sure that when this closes, it closes perfectly fine, that there's no resistance. So, isn't too difficult. However, what you'll need to do is explain that to a gunsmith. You can show them this video if you want to actually explain what you need to get done. What you're doing is just widening this portion of the gun. You are not making any cuts, however. I'll show you something here. You're not making any cuts in this portion of the receiver. If you wanted to actually do this full auto, which you're not allowed to do, there's something called full auto trip, which actually needs a cut done in this portion of the upper receiver. Making that cut is actually completely illegal. As long as you're just widening the wheel well, there's nothing illegal about doing that modification. Of course, keep in mind I'm making this statement based on federal laws, not on state-to-state laws. So if you live in the state of California, first of all, you can't do any of this stuff because there's more than a 10-round magazine. But pretty much in most red states, this isn't an issue. Okay, after you've actually made those cuts, you're going to go ahead and reassemble the gun. And I'll show you that. Now keep in mind, you may or may not, it depends on your particular gun, you may actually have to take some sandpaper and file these down a little deeper. In my case, I actually didn't have a problem with it. Mine sat pretty nicely. Go ahead and close your stock. Make sure your stock is in the open position. Push this through. And make sure you put the sling portion on the side of the gun that you would have the gun sling to. So in my case, I put it on the left. Go ahead and put the magazine together. Like so. Oops. It's actually a pretty high tension spring, so maybe a little tricky. Not real that big of a deal. There you go. And that's pretty much your HK UMP conversion. The only portion of this that really takes you any decent amount of time is making that cut in the upper well like I showed you. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you can have someone else do it for you. But I actually just did it with the Dremel. So that being said, if you have any questions, please email me at info@civiliantacticalweapons.com. Do not send any emails through YouTube since I don't answer YouTube email. And I hope to see you in a future episode.